questions, I guess?
So I want to thank, it's worked fine, right? I want to thank Pat for the work she did and all those who helped her. And I was going to ask about the bubble zone, but I think you actually answered the question. But I wanted you to make a little comment because recently we had decisions where the euthanasia lobby tried to get the UK courts and the Irish court to make similar decisions as it did in Canada. In fact, they used exactly the same arguments. And of course, the court said no. Ireland's decision was better, but the UK decision was basically, it's not our role. We don't do that. We don't strike down a laws for Parliament. And I want you to make comment on that in the sense of, didn't we start with that original same system as the UK has today?
Yes. Yeah, we did, and I think in a lot of ways it's, you know, it's better. It makes it harder for politicians to just say, oh, the courts took care of that, right? We think of even conservative politicians saying, abortion, Morgentaler, what are we going to do? It's a misreading of Morgentaler, but even so, it's just like, that's the judicial branch's problem now, and that's bad for democracy.
Thank you, John, for the work you're doing on this. John Hoff from Langley, BC. And my question is, who is the target of the bubble? I'm sorry to take it away from FOI, but who is the target of this bubble zone legislation? Whom specifically are they targeting? Are they trying to stop the March for Life? Are they trying to stop 40 Days for Life? Just who do you believe the target for the bubble zone legislation is that's drafted here and now law in Ontario?
I'm sure a lot of people in the room have different thoughts about that. I having read some of the answers from BC, Newfoundland, and Ontario, it seems, I mean, BC was a different history, and there was some obviously large protests that actually closed off physically access to some of these places, and I think they kind of used that in BC years ago, and that case is distinguishable in a few ways. But reading Hansard more recently, it just seems like a progressive fundraising cause and a reason to pat themselves on the back. There's not a whole lot of evidence being brought forward. The government, before introducing this bill, went on kind of a fishing expedition, saying we're doing consultations across the province, and the consultation questions, we actually participated in the consultation. Consultation questions are, please tell us if you've been harassed by a pro-lifer, basically. Tell us if you're a doctor and this has happened to you, or tell us about people who've been near a clinic or hospital. It's almost like the government's like, well, we don't have the evidence to introduce this bill, so we're fishing for it because we've already decided, we've already sent out our, our list emails saying like, hey, this is our progressive cause, we're protecting women's rights, we're doing all this wonderful stuff. It's a wedge issue, it's for the, I think, more leftist base, and there's not really a whole lot of evidence to support it.
Yeah, just our presence offends them. Somebody, the previous talk. I have just a quick question, because maybe other people are wondering. You mentioned your 12-month action plan. How can we access that? I really like the sound of that.
Just email info@arpacanada.ca and maybe put it in the subject line and just ask, and then you get signed up for it that way.
Can you give that address again, please?
info@arpa, A-R-P-A, Canada.ca.
At first, I thought what I was going to say was an objection to what you said. I don't think it is, but maybe I can ask you to clarify what you said about the legislature versus the judiciary. And I'm thinking of the American case, because in an obvious way, abortion is a far larger issue in American politics than it has been in Canadian or British politics or European politics generally for the last several years. I think that's not inconsistent with what you're saying, but I wonder if you could spell that out a bit.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that's right. I think partly there's obviously cultural differences there. I think it'd be fair to say America is a much more pro-life place, and because of I think some of the legal hurdles set up to pro-life legislation, that it becomes that much more of a battle. Even when you have that much support for pro-life causes, that you can actually get laws passed. That it still creates, it legalizes the issue in a major way. And in Canada, that's been more of a kind of a complete wall to meaningful debate on it. In the States, I think thankfully the strength of the movement there has overcome that somewhat. Yeah, that answers it.
Pat, I just wanted to thank you for your work. I was speaking with some people earlier today who said you're an example of an ordinary person doing something extraordinary. So you're a great example for all of us. Thank you. And then I wanted to ask you, so earlier you mentioned that there were talking points that MPPs could have used for the debate on Bill 163. Now, did you provide those talking points to our MPPs? Because right now I'm looking at the Hansard and looking at the principal debaters. The only PC MPP that I see here is Lisa MacLeod, and I don't think she used any of those arguments that you mentioned. So were they provided to our MPPs?
Yes. We and other groups participated even before the bill was introduced. We heard it was going to be introduced already in May, and we started contacting MPPs and encouraging people to do that. We actually had encouraging people to send emails and that before the bill was even introduced, and then once it was introduced, of course, it passed very quickly. But we were in contact with MPPs, and we were trying to get the grassroots to do that as well. And a lot of people sent emails with some of those points in them. So, it could be. I think you can always do more. Looking at how quickly it passed, I think I was a bit surprised at the move to fast track it. So you look back, you think, oh, I wish I could have done more, but there was certainly communication there.
Pat, a question for you. I was wondering if the outcome of what you went through in your exercise with the province of Ontario, whether or not that's going to help. I don't know if there are similar blockages in other provinces, and whether or not this would help in an exercise of getting similar information across the country, and whether or not this could then be used for regular kind of collection of data that would be helpful to the movement.
I don't know how much this will help the rest of Canada, because everybody's like, it's very Ontario-centered, so I don't know really what the effect could be on the rest. I mean, I don't know. Sorry. Don't know if I could help.
Maybe John could answer that.
There aren't, that kind of barrier is not in place in any other province to my knowledge. BC has some limit in its legislation, basically saying you can't get clinic or hospital specific information, or even you can't ask for information particular to a certain geographic zone if that zone, say, only has one facility in it. Which is basically a way to prevent you from getting information about how many abortions is this clinic doing and what kind and all of that.
I come from the one riding in Ontario that is not going to get hit by the asteroid, Jack McLaren's riding. And I don't know if this is a question for you guys, but strategically, I'm going to vote for Jack. And even though he is with the Trillium Party, I don't even care with the Trillium Party, I'm voting for Jack. But what do the rest of people in Ontario do vis-a-vis the Conservatives?
Well, I think I just like to answer that. We don't vote for Patrick Brown. I mean,
You can't.
I'm going to be voting for Jack unless there's somebody else. Obviously, I can't vote for Kathleen. Will it make a difference? No, but it's pretty pathetic. So yeah, I guess Jack McLaren's the man.
He's the man.
You have time for one more? It's more of a statement. I really appreciate your work, Pat. We supported it greatly, and it was wonderful. And thank you, John, because you're very good at what you do, and I appreciate that too. And the alternative to Patrick Brown is, we hope, the Ontario Alliance Party, which many of you in this room may not be aware of. Camping Life Coalition is helping that party get off the ground. But we also work with any pro-life candidate, and that's come back to bite us. But there are others who are solid, and they still didn't speak up, as you pointed out. that was the kind of bone-crushing pressure they were under. And then you wonder, when you work and you work and you work to have a pro-life candidate nominated, and then the rubber meets the road and they don't do their part. These are the questions you ask yourself when you're in the movement, but I don't want you to get discouraged, because everything you're hearing is always about you still have to get up and you still have to persevere and you still have to do it. Even when those MPs let you down. But there might be an alternative, and that's why I got up. There might be. We're still waiting, we're still hoping. It's an interminable amount of time for them to get their papers, their approval, but it's Ontario Alliance. And it will carry a pro-life voice, a very strong pro-life influence.
I have just a quick question concerning the context of these restrictions on...
Get closer to the microphone.
Concerning the context of these restrictions on abortion statistics, how does that compare to information about any other medical procedure?
Yeah, there isn't any censorship of information about any other procedure. It's obviously you can't access a patient's information or anything like that, but there's never been anything like that, where you single out a particular, if you want to call it medical procedure, or government service where you say you can't ask for data about that. It just hasn't happened. Being asked to share with you our link, arpacanada.ca/action.
That's for the 12 step.
That's for the 12-month action plan.
What does ARPA stand for, and how long has it been around?
ARPA is the Association for Reformed Political Action, and it's been around for quite a while, but as kind of an organization starting with one part-time employee, it's about 10 years old, and it's grown pretty quickly. Started with one full half-time employee, and now we got a whole team, so it's good.
So thank you to Patricia and John for their determination in fighting this important access to freedom of information case, because having accurate abortion statistics is really essential to the debate and to the research that we do. So a big thank you to the both of you.